Okay, so it's being recorded right now. We'll start in like roughly a minute. Or we can start now since it's 4:05. Okay, so thank you for coming today. We really appreciate the outcome and the support. Nice to see you all in this Zoom space. Also want to thank the panelists for coming today and taking time out of your busy schedules to come and basically give us some advice and insight for the students that are present here. The goal of this panel is to essentially provide these students with advice from professionals such as yourselves in these fields. Again, the students also have questions prepared to ask the panelists. But before we start with this Q&A session, we'd like to have panelists introduce themselves with their name, occupation, educational background, and any fun facts about themselves. Would anyone like to start first?
I can start. My name is Megan Crawford, and I'm currently a technical project manager at ADIC Innovations. I'll actually be transitioning to a new career or new position in a couple weeks, but in the same field. So that's my current position. I am an ESS or Earth System Science graduate from UCI in 2015. So by, education, I would say I'm more of like an earth scientist, but in terms of my career, I've kind of transitioned more to like corporate sustainability and ESG, for the time being. And a fun fact about myself, within the last like year and a half, I got into boxing a bit more. With COVID, my gym kind of shut down, so haven't been able to practice as much, but hoping to do that again soon when gyms open up where I can get a bag for myself.
Okay, I'll go. My name is Mindy Nicewonger. I am a postdoctoral fellow at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, commonly known as NOAA, which is where you get all your weather forecasts from. I'm out in Boulder, Colorado now, and I basically am looking at how climate changes are impacting what's in our atmosphere. And I got my PhD from the Earth System Science Department at UC Irvine back in 2019. Previously, before that, I earned a bachelor's degree in meteorology from Texas A&M. So in terms of like, I am an earth and climate scientist, physical scientist. I also do some consulting on the side for a sustainability company. And fun fact about me, it's the one I go to every time, is that I got to go to Antarctica during grad school. And I lived at the South Pole for a few months.
That's very hard to beat. So I'm Phillip Richardson. I'm an anesthesiologist here in Orange County, LA County, Southern California. Other roles, have multiple hats. One is a vice president of medical affairs for surgical services with my hospital at PIH Health, which is in Whittier. I've led a group of anesthesiologists, and I've had the pleasure and honor of serving on the board at Chalk Children's, as well as my current hospital at PIH. Background, I was a physics major and loved it. Didn't think I'd ever want to do anything else, but then after getting into a PhD program, senior year of college, had a lot of other kind of friends and so forth have medical issues, and I figured it might be a little better to figure out how to help people as opposed to figuring out how warm the sun is. So I decided to go to med school, got to do all the prereqs, got a bachelor's in biosci as well, did med school, got out after anesthesia residency, got involved in the kind of business of the group that I was in, decided I didn't know anything about business, so I got the MBA. And so just, what can I say, too much education. And fun facts, not sure, I've got 2 college students, one off in Florida because he figures it's remote, so he may as well be somewhere that he can be out and about. And the other one who wants to go to South Africa, but I'm trying to tell him you can't, given the current situation. So at least they're adventurous. So.
All right, thank you guys so much for introducing yourselves. We want to give everyone the opportunity to, all the students that are here, to put any questions that you might have in the chat. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and just ask them. And then if we don't have any questions in the next 30 seconds or so, we do have some ones that were asked beforehand by students while they were RSVPing, so we can jump in with those. So I'll just start with one now. And we can go in the same order that you all introduced yourselves. So Megan, and then Mindy, and then Phillip. So in terms of college or your undergraduate career, what was the one thing or the most important thing that you did that you believe shaped your career the way it is right now?
I'm just going to jump in because sometimes these things kind of take some time to think about. So I'll save Megan. I would say reflecting, taking some time to go sit on the beach and go for long walks and just really kind of understanding what I wanted to do and what was in it for me and what really drove me. And I think that really kind of helped kind of change my whole course. But you know, the worst thing I hated through college was trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to do. And I kept asking my parents, you know, what should I do? And the only advice I ever got from my mother, which is totally frustrating at the time, but something I totally agree with at this point, is do what you love. I'm like, well, great, I don't know what that is. So in addition to reflecting and having some time to just kind of think, I think it's also just getting out there and just doing a ton of things and just getting a lot of experience and seeing what really clicks.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off what Phillip said. So I think one of the things I guess I was most proud of, probably not at the time, but just like changing majors, because I really wasn't sure what to do. And so I entered in as, biological sciences major as a freshman. And then by my second year, I ended up switching to earth system science. I also considered like a couple other different majors, but I think in that time I was just able to, get exposure to, a variety of classes, subjects, with the general eds, and then just also trying to explore what that major was I wanted to pursue. So I think taking that time, and I think that's also kind of helped me in my career as well, of not like really settling for anything and just kind of just continuing to learn and kind of go after what I want.
Yeah, and I would say something very similar in that just try to meet as many different people as you can, because everybody brings a lot to the table at different experiences and perspectives, and it can really open your mind to different opportunities. For me in particular, I worked at a fast food restaurant in college. And, I would have never met a lot of the people that I worked with had it not been for me working at a fast food place. But I think it really shaped my desire to help others, because I saw a lot of the issues facing people, and so just do different things, get out of your silos.
Thank you so much for your responses. For one of our other questions, it's how did most people get into industry, or what are some common entry-level jobs that you can recommend?
I mean, I'm not in industry per se, but I recently have ventured into the world of kind of business. I'm working with a startup company. Mainly, I just was interested in what's going on with like climate change and sustainability. So I just offered up my knowledge to this company, and they were really receptive. So just putting it out there, like asking people if they have opportunities. The worst thing they're ever going to say is no. But they could say yes too, right? So, yeah.
No, and I would say in medicine, at least, it's very hierarchical, and it's just a very rigid pathway. But at the same time, you want to try and get as much experience as you can. When you're in college, you're trying to volunteer as much as you can and go do mission work and whatever. But it's a pretty much set course that you go to med school, then you have to do an internship, residency, then you're joining a group or some sort of institution. very few people anymore are going out and opening their own office. And then it's kind of, as Mindy said, getting out there and knowing people, talking to people, seeing what good groups are, what you want out of life. Do you want to, be out in nature and have a lot of time off, or do you want to be in the city and work and do research? And there's a million different ways that you can spend your time and focus those areas.
And consulting, I would say there's a lot of opportunities like entry level that I've seen even within Orange County. I would say it's not maybe a career path for everyone. I honestly didn't think it was going to be like a great career path for me, like after graduation, but I think just something about me is like, I just like to kind of experiment and not, cancel anything out without trying it out first. So I decided to give it a try, and it is actually pretty rewarding. And like I said, there's lots of opportunities in Irvine, within California, across the country, even in different countries at the entry level, and a lot of room for growth from what I've seen just in kind of my short, like 5.5 year career path so far. So yeah, I would say definitely consider giving it a try if you have like interest. And there's different fields, I would say, for consulting, even with like environmental sciences. You could go into something more like doing like CEQA, NEPA, or something like what I'm more involved in with kind of corporate sustainability.
We just got a question in the chat for addressed to all the panelists. So if each of you could describe what a typical day at work looks like for you in your specific positions.
Okay, I'll go ahead, Megan.
Okay. I like a typical day now is really just working from home, given the current situation. But actually, it's not, for me, it's not too different than, what it was like pre-COVID. I would just kind of go into the office. I would have probably a series of meetings that I would need to meet either internally or with clients. A lot of the day also just kind of like in Excel or, various other programs to complete projects. So we're just kind of driven based off of client deadlines for the most part at my job. So really just like managing kind of your schedule and projects, and kind of the rest, it's really flexible, I would say, at my current job. We do work with clients from around the world, so our company has to be a bit flexible. Like we don't have to start at 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. every day, like kind of shifts. Sometimes I have meetings at like 9 o'clock at night. So
yeah, so for me too, in a normal world, I was going into the laboratory, which means I share an office with somebody. But for me right now, I'm doing a lot of data analysis. So just running computer code, lots of data programming. Yeah, and I mean, now I do the same thing, but just from my home.
Yeah, for me, before COVID, every day is a little different, but typically I would get to work about 6:30, round with the nurses to understand what the OR flow is going to be for the day, starting clinical cases at 7:30, operating until early afternoon or evening, and then depending on the day, follow up with kind of administrative meetings or meeting with folks. So a year ago, my son was doing a semester away in China, so I got pretty interested when things were happening over there. And so I asked the medical executive committee if I could just give him an update. And so I gave a little 5-minute spiel about what was happening in China before everything exploded. It's like, great, you're the leader for this. So for the last little bit, I've been spending a ton of time just reading everything I possibly can to get up to date and what stats are available, and then helping meet with everyone from nurses to logistics to just put any input from that perspective to kind of help lead our response and ensure the community is taken care of.
Thank you so much. For our next question, are there any particular courses in college that you feel students should definitely take in order to benefit your future careers?
Well, a course I took in undergraduate was public speaking. And I swear by this course for everyone, even if you don't think, so my degree was in meteorology, so they were training everyone to be on TV basically. But I think it's great if you can communicate your knowledge and being able to get in front of people and do it in a way where you're not feeling like you're going to pass out every time is also a good strategy. So yeah, public speaking, if it's available, or any type of communication course. I think this pandemic has really proven that we're probably going to move into a more technology driven workforce kind of idea. So being able to communicate well virtually and email and through Zoom, I think it's going to change how we communicate and how we interact. So being able to do that well is important.
No, and I'll echo that and say that, there's kind of two different stages. The first stage is mastering the technical skills. And the classes that I would advocate for that are obviously whatever you're specifically studying. But there's also a great book that just argued that math is just kind of this kind of underpinning science of especially all the physical sciences. And so, having that strong kind of logic and being able to follow things through is really advantageous to really get that technical skill down that, when you're starting out, it really is important. But I completely agree with Mindy. One of the interviews I did in my lifetime was a chair of neurosurgery. And he said, the most important thing I ever did was I took an English class in college. And I agree because, as you progress through your life, not only do you have to understand your technical expertise, but then you have to be able to communicate those ideas. Otherwise, they just kind of languish, and you need to be able to express yourselves to others, not only within your company or your department, but outside. Some issue is going to come up and Congress is going to know about it. And if you are eloquently and able to, simplify it to the salient points and communicate that to folks, it's a very valuable skill. And without people being able to communicate their ideas and their insights, we all kind of suffer.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Communication is probably like the biggest thing in consulting, just being able to communicate with your colleagues, your clients. You want to sound eloquent when you're, speaking with them, not just like a frazzled mess. So that is extremely important. And unfortunately, I did not actually get ever the opportunity to take a public speaking class in college. So I would really recommend it if, that is an option, or at least take classes where, maybe a component is doing, a speech for a class, or, class projects where you have to kind of communicate like what your work is. I think some other good, so like courses are more so like focused on like projects or like research. So I did a lot of like 4-credit research, and I'm not sure what the opportunities are these days, but I think just getting kind of some more real world skills and then getting credit for it, that is really what helped me kind of apply that into my next job. Although a lot of it didn't maybe exactly translate, but kind of gave me the confidence to, go out and get a job and, do some other things.
Thank you so much for your responses to that. So another question that was asked by students beforehand. What piece of advice would you give to your college self, knowing what you know now?
I guess I would say that just recognize that life is not a straight line. We like to think that, you just go from kindergarten to elementary to, middle school, and that, I'm going to, do whatever. I'm going to be Einstein. I'm going to get to, be on this linear accelerator and do these great things. But nothing ever really tends to work that way. It's good to have a goal and remain focused, but there's a lot of luck in life. And you need to be prepared when that door opens, but you also have to recognize sometimes the opportunities don't exist at that time, and be able to, kind of reconfigure, find another opportunity.
Yeah, and I would say, like, don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, it's kind of cliche, but you're only ever going to learn and understand things if you ask the questions that maybe no one else is asking, or even just to make sure you're understanding it properly. So, at UCI, I was in a laboratory and I trained a lot of undergraduates to help us. And I always told them, please ask a question. If anything I'm saying to you does not make sense, do not go on your own and just try to figure it out, because you could break something or embarrass yourself, or just ask a question. I'm happy to answer those questions for you.
I would tell like myself back in college to just kind of think ahead and like plan some, because I feel like I was very narrow minded and just kind of thought about like the present and like grades and just things that were going on at that moment. But I think if I would have just kind of stopped and planned, I would have known that probably like everything in the present isn't really all that important. I mean, some things are very important, but to just kind of look ahead and, think what I want for myself, and not every detail isn't going to dictate what the future is going to hold. So.
Thank you so much for your responses. For one of our other questions, how did you set yourself apart from others who wanted the same job position as you?
I would say kind of what set me apart from others for the same job description is like, or going kind of for the same field. I asked a lot of questions, I would say, in the very beginning, but then I kind of just worked towards like answering those questions. I think that kind of sets me apart from, others on my current team or others in the field. So I think to really like for success, it's good to really ask questions at the beginning, but then like those questions that you ask, just work to be like proactive and kind of answer those questions. And really get involved in everything that you do.
I would say that I've tried to make myself more than just an applicant per se, and more of a human and like well-rounded with experiences and multiple platforms, because at the end of the day, yeah, I'm doing a job for a company, but I'm also contributing my perspectives, and especially in STEM with diversity, inclusion, and equity, being at the forefront, being able to be empathetic and have the human perspective. So I just try to keep things real and also just bring more to the table than just I'm a data processor. A computer can do that, but what am I bringing besides just being able to code? Because a lot of people can do that.
No, I agree. And especially right now, I mean, the diversity, I think, is very important. And obviously, to me, it's not just the things that you can't control, your melanin component or gender, but it's also your experiences. I mean, I think one thing that really helped me get into med school was I had the physics background, which is not a very common thing. And when the med schools are building their classes, they want to have unique folks. And I can tell you, in my med school class, there were some very unique folks who had done very interesting things. And it was telling during the MBA program when they said, look, you don't want to be well-rounded. You want to be spiky. You want to be the expert in whatever, downhill skiing, nuclear physics, whatever it is. But if you're the expert in that thing, you're bringing this unique experience. Now you need to have the competencies to be able to communicate your ideas and the technical expertise of what you're being hired to do, but bring that extra layer of a diverse opinion so that the group can make the best decision really adds a lot of value.
Thank you guys for those really great responses. So next, of course, because we're online, we're always going to have a question about COVID. So this question asked by a student is about, how have you seen COVID change your workplace? Not just in terms of your daily routine, but how has funding been affected? How has hiring been affected? How do you see it changing the dynamics of your workplace?
So I can tell you, healthcare is completely different. California, we knew what was happening in Italy, in China, New York. So California shut down dramatically. And so the hospitals were absolutely empty. And many probably were on the verge of bankruptcy if some didn't even go bankrupt, just because of the way that we as a state handled things. Then we had the first wave. Fortunately, we had the time that we had built up some of the PPE, and the fact that, again, this comes to kind of timing and luck. Most of California had built new hospitals in order to meet earthquake standards. So most hospitals were overbuilt, and we have all this kind of bed capacity. So it's a very different situation than Italy, where generally during the winter time, they're running at 110% capacity already. Here we were kind of starting at 0%. So we were able to ramp up all right. During the summer and fall, things kind of started to get back to normal, but still, people are scared. People weren't going to see their physicians. So everyone who's coming into the hospital is way sicker. People aren't coming in when they have chest pain. They're waiting until they have a massive heart attack. They're coming in when they have a massive stroke. So everyone in the hospital is a lot sicker. Then we had December and January where we kind of finally had the China experience. Fortunately, we're kind of past that now and hopefully getting back to some semblance of normalcy. But it's been amazing, the tremendous amount of work that everyone's been doing, from acquiring supplies that we need to trying to social distance, keep the nurses and staff safe, find extra space for break rooms, bring in counselors to help staff deal with grieving and all the social, psychological issues that folks have dealt with during this whole process. Watching patients pass alone because families are unable to come into the hospital. Just the emotional toll has been immense as well. And then you get into the economic side of everything. It's just devastating. So it's been a very unique year.
I would say that especially in a lot of the computational data for earth and climate science, I think it's really shown that people can work from wherever and still get things done. So I think, and I've seen this a lot, that in terms of job market there's a few things, right? So we have a new president and we have a new administration who is putting climate change and earth science forefront. So that is changing our funding situation a lot in terms of NOAA. But then also in terms of, I could honestly get a job anywhere and work here and never have to move. So I think it is opening. I think COVID, you want to look at the silver lining of the situation. We've all learned how to work remotely and telework. And I think a lot of companies are going to offer that option. So you can kind of live where you want or close to your family or however your personal dynamics are, and still be able to do a job that you enjoy. So I think that's kind of shaped it a little bit.
I think there's a balance of good opportunities, as Mindy mentioned, just with remote working, being able to get a job from anywhere, and businesses just realizing it actually saves a lot of money, and it can be just as effective to have remote employees. And then on the other hand, just kind of working with businesses from all different industries and consulting, just kind of seeing the effects of how critical manufacturing, it actually boomed business quite a bit. I mean, actually put like probably severe straining on, you know, a lot of employees. But, you know, their business is booming. So they actually had more funding for things like ESG programs and to get consultants. So that was a good thing for us, kind of working with some of our clients that were in those industries. And then, you know, for others, maybe like in the entertainment industry, like cruise lines or like hotels, where their budgets were really strained because, you know, that ESG and like sustainability wasn't considered as important, you know, because there's maybe more important things within the business that they need to keep it running. So we just having to be understanding with that. But I think kind of coming out where we are now, I'm just seeing a lot of companies actually kind of move even further towards, you know, just being more sustainable, which is kind of good to see.
Thank you for your responses. So we do have one question in the chat, and they said, can you talk a little about the fieldwork to work desk ratio as an environmental consultant again?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So as an environmental consultant, I actually don't do really any field work. Like pre-COVID, we would do, I would say like work business trips, like we would go visit clients. But like in my specific position, there's really no need to be in the field. So I would say like I'm 100% desk. But I do know there are, you know, employees at my company that kind of work on the more the SQL side, and they might need to do some biological monitoring. So it might be more like, you know, 50-50 or, you know, a mix of field work and kind of desk work.
What about you, Mindy? What, before COVID, how much time would you spend out in the field versus analyzing data?
Oh, 0% in the field. So at NOAA, all of our samples are taken by technicians in the field. So we have, like, for example, NOAA has sites at South Pole Station in Antarctica, in America Samoa, in Barrow, Alaska. So I'm not doing that, although I wish I was. But yeah, so I was 100% desk, and I'm still 100% desk.
And yeah, I have an office, but yeah, I'd say, you know, most of the time I'm just, you know, going around. Most of the time in the OR, it's, you know, up and about and moving around, and then, you know, the different meetings, whatever. So quantify.
Thank you so much for answering that. So we've already talked a little bit about more general skill sets. This question is more about specific skill sets to your job. So what are the specific skill sets that you believe a person needs to advance in your career? And how do you recommend people pick those up? So either things that you did or things that you wish you had done to gain those skills.
Well, I guess I would go back and say, you know, first you have the technical skills, and that's you're going to get during your either on the job training or when you do your PhD or when you do residency. That's when you'll kind of hone your technical skills. But after that, it's kind of the quote unquote soft skills of, you know, emotional intelligence, being able to work well with people, being able to relate, being able to communicate. And a lot of that is just practice. So to me, it's just getting out there and doing it, and trying to, you know, take a leadership role in, you know, whatever, club soccer, or just anything where you're working with people and kind of dealing with personalities and trying to understand that and convey a message and build consensus and get everyone moving in the same direction.
I'd say for my job, like most of the technical skills were, you know, acquired like once I accepted the position. So I didn't really have any specific training towards it, you know, based on my curriculum in school. And just and kind of picking that up, it was a lot of self-learning for me. So I think like as students, you kind of have that opportunity of like, you know, doing a lot of reading and, you know, studying for class. So I think it was actually good for me as my first job. Like I didn't have a lot of, you know, guidance and kind of picking up these technical skills. I was just so used to, reading and absorbing. So I think that's like a really good skill set to have, especially in your first job, because you don't know what to expect in terms of your, first supervisor, like how much kind of hand holding you're going to have with that. And then like I've developed my technical skills kind of beyond that. It is really important, I think, at the beginning, but then as Phillip said, I think with time, just the soft skills is kind of something more to focus on, especially kind of once you've kind of progressed from, behind the scenes, maybe being an analyst to, being a project manager where you're doing a lot of more communication day to day. So just practicing on those soft skills, really just getting comfortable with like the uncomfortable. So.
I would say for the field of climate science, earth science, really knowing how to code because it's such a data rich system now. We have, so many satellites and so much stuff. And I learned to code in college, but I didn't actually use it and really learn it in detail until graduate school. And now all I do is sit behind a computer and make programming scripts. So immersing yourself, if this is something you're interested in, pursuing, learning multiple programming languages is also very desirable. And so, yeah, that's what if I could go back, I would definitely take more classes in computer programming.
So Mindy, when you're analyzing your data, what program are you using now, or mostly?
Right now I'm using MATLAB because that's what I was trained in. But I see the field going towards open source free stuff, which is Python. And almost every job application I've looked at in the last 4 or 5 months says they want people that are, that know Python, and I don't know it. So I'm just like, well, maybe I could lie. But no, so Python, anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I mean, I learned computer languages a long time ago, and even though I don't use any of it anymore, it has come in so useful to just understand how things are put together. And as again, it's like math. It's the fundamentals of logical flow of things and if-thens, and so.
Exactly. And I mean, we think about everything we do now is a computer, like our cell phones, all of our resources, Amazon, all of that is run with algorithms and computer programming. So with that knowledge, you could get a job anywhere, really.
I had some college friends in physics that did a PhD, did a couple postdocs, and then ended up programming computers. But I'm sure his, theoretical physics came in handy to help model the things he was modeling. But yeah, it ended up being a lot of computer programming.
Thank you so much. For one of our questions over here, we have, for those interested in pursuing a career related to those that you have presented before yourself, what do you find to be the biggest challenge of getting into your field, and how can students prepare for it?
So to me, I would say, I mean, med school is probably the biggest hurdle. And with that, again, I would go back to the diversity and try and be unique of, we had PhDs in physics and biochemistry, and some people call med school the great equalizer, because you have these just amazing people that are very spiky, experts in different areas. We had one person who bicycled around the world, and I mean, just had done very interesting and creative things. And I think that makes you stand out as opposed to being another 4.0 person with really no character.
I guess the hardest thing to get into my field was definitely the PhD. I don't know. I think, a lot of companies, jobs are looking for that higher level of degree, not because it's just, you're smarter or anything. It has nothing to do with your intelligence. It's really about the time management and project management and self-motivation And that's what really is brought out in higher degrees like master's and PhD. Not that you don't acquire those things in undergrad, but it's really, they're pushed to the limits in the higher levels of education. So, those are pretty hard, and just, and yeah, as much as you hate it, like time managing and keeping prioritizing and yeah, just staying on top of things is kind of what's going to push you into a good career path.
For my career path, I didn't choose to do any like higher education yet. It's not, I would say, super necessary. There are, some higher level people that do have masters and PhDs, which is great. I think it, helps boost their pay. It also definitely just brings more perspective for them, like kind of in their field. So I think it's definitely like has a lot of value, but coming in as entry level, I think what was probably most challenging, kind of like what Mindy said, is like, at higher education, you're able to kind of just deal more with time management and kind of more push your limits and kind of learn those skills. But, coming in as entry level, I feel like college didn't maybe prepare me completely what I needed to get kind of my first job. So, those first couple months were critical to just like, just getting my act together in terms of like time management and just like shaping my career. So I would say that's like what's most challenging, and really to just, convey that, you would be a good employee like for your first job, because you're just like, right out of college or whatever, you're still feel like just a kid. That's how I felt during my first interview. So for just people to have like, faith and respect for you.
Thank you so much for those responses. Next, we actually have a question that's specifically for Mindy. It's about NOAA. They wanted you to talk a little bit more about your research, the research that you're conducting right now, and also what kind of graduate programs do you see in the people who work at NOAA? What's kind of the makeup of your cohort with your colleagues?
Okay, great question. So my research right now, so for reference, NOAA is a huge entity. I'm particularly invested in the atmospheric side, but there's a whole oceanographic side. So if you're interested in oceans, that's half of what NOAA does. But I'm at the Global Monitoring Laboratory, which in its name, we're looking at what's happening across the globe in the atmosphere in particular. And I'm in one of the groups. So one thing you'll learn in the government is they like to just put you in all these tiers of names. So in the Global Monitoring Laboratory, I'm in the halocarbons and other atmospheric trace species division, which means I'm studying, in our group, we measure a lot of compounds like CFCs and other ozone depleting substances. So maybe if you've taken an ESS class, you remember about the ozone hole, and also remember at the lab or the campus tours where they stop and say, Terry Rowland, he discovered CFCs. He didn't actually discover CFCs, he discovered that they were contributing to ozone depletion. So our group is really focused on monitoring the status of all of these different compounds and how they've been phased out as part of international agreements. And actually, just to put in a shameless plug, there's going to be a paper coming out tomorrow talking about CFCs from China. So just keep that. It's going to be all over the news probably. It's not my paper, it's my advisors. But and my research is really focused on, they have all of this data. I'm telling you, like decades worth of data, and no one's looked at it because they don't have enough human power to like process the data. So I've been looking at about 30 years worth of atmospheric measurements from across the globe for particular gases that are naturally emitted from things like the ocean, wildfires, but they are ozone depleting substances. So I've been looking at how climate changes like ENSO, El Nino, are impacting those emissions. So in terms of the types of degrees and types of backgrounds, a lot of chemists. So most of the people I work with have degrees in chemistry. I also see a lot of people with math degrees and physics degrees. Honestly, any physical science degree is going to get you in the door there. There's a lot of people that do IT support. So because we have so much data, we have a lot of servers. So we have probably 10 people in our division that are just focused on IT support. But yeah, pretty much anything, you know, oceanography, but really math, physics, chemistry. Yeah, I hope I answered that question.
Thank you so much. For all of our panelists, how do you deal with the stressful parts of your job?
I just have to like talk it out sometimes. My current supervisor, like I feel like a really good person to just talk with. Like there's a lot of I feel like stressful times, especially like there's a seasonality to my job. So like in the summers, we're just like extremely busy, working like 12, 15-hour days sometimes. And it doesn't make sense. But you know, just being able to talk with somebody and like kind of strategize, prioritize things, I think helps me a lot. Sometimes I just get really riled up when there's a lot going on. So
this work from home situation has been really good for me because if I'm like upset or stressed or my computer is not working with me, I just go for a walk. And also I have my cats. So like, you know, just kind of like and also just remembering like it's a moment in time, like whatever it is, it's going to pass. Yeah, I've actually done a lot better with stress now that I'm not in graduate school, just because I realized like I was stressed out. Like everyone will tell you this, like you're going to freak out about exams and finals. And in the end, it maybe didn't really matter that you were so stressed. You know, it actually probably hindered your performance. So just kind of go with the flow a little bit. And yeah, just if it happens, it happens. Take a breath, walk away, get a change of scenery and come back to it.
No, I would agree with both of those. I would say that, you know, just being well prepared and, you know, well trained. And so that, you know, ties into just, you know, the being a continual student, lifelong learning. And so that way, when something does come up, you're a little bit more prepared. And so that prevents the stress from occurring, as opposed to finding yourself in this position of like, where did this come from? I don't know anything about this. Where you've been to a few conferences and you've heard other people talk about it, you're like, oh, I heard about this. And then same thing, you know, going to the conference, able to talk to it. So not only being able to talk to your peers in your department or your own company, but sometimes you just need to talk to people in other companies or around the world and go, oh, this isn't unique. Everyone else is doing this. And oh yeah, there's them here, but well, if I was at this other company, I would have those problems, which was another tidbit of advice I learned at some point, which was you should always be looking for a job. Because either everyone tends to get the idea that they're the most important thing and that they're worth more than they really are. And so by looking for a job, you understand your real value that you're bringing to the table, but it also helps you, you know, not only kind of reset your barometer of where you should be, but, you know, maybe you're lucky and you find that great opportunity that's going to really use the skills that you really want to, and there's another great opportunity around the corner as opposed to just being locked in. So.
Thank you so much. So we're coming to the end of our time, so we do have time for one more question. And this was another one that was posed ahead of time by a student. They were wondering about, you know, specifically in their case, PhD programs, but graduate school in general. What advice would you give to someone who isn't sure if they're ready for graduate school? Or what would you say, how do you know when you're ready?
I would say you'll know when you're ready. And if you're not sure, I wouldn't do it, because I mean, even just a master's program, you're going to be spending a lot of time and energy. And, you know, all my friends that did PhD, or I mean, the MBA program, or other friends that did it before, you know, when you're done, they're just like, I have no idea how I found the time to get that done. And if you're not committed and really want to be there, you're just going to be wasting the time and money.
Yeah, I would say think about why you're interested in maybe going to graduate school. If you think it's going to make you a lot of money down the line, you might think second. I mean, like I graduated from my PhD and I was 29, where my friends from college were already making tons of money for 6 years. So that maybe not, don't think of it like that, but also, you know, if you're thinking of graduate school, it doesn't hurt to ask graduate students what they're going through, what it's like. I mean, most of your TAs, in fact, all of your TAs are graduate students, and they're balancing teaching and doing research in their personal lives, right? Some of them have young children. So kind of like understanding. For me, I had no idea what graduate school was until I did a research experience for undergraduates, which is called an REU. And I got to see like what the demands are, what the expectations are, and what you get at the end of the day from having a PhD attached to your name. So yeah, definitely reach out. Most graduate students will be pretty open about the pros and the cons, right? It's not awful. I got to go to Antarctica, which was really fun. But a con is I went to Antarctica for 3 months and I was away from my family for Christmas, Thanksgiving. So, you know, you have to weigh the pros and cons for every decision you make in life. And sometimes the cons outwin and sometimes the pros outwin. So.
Yeah, no, and it doesn't define success. I mean, just having an advanced degree is not the end all be all. I mean, everyone always comes up, you know, with the question of, oh, well, do I need to get the MBA? And my response is, you know, you can get it if you want to, but, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, I mean, none of them have it. And I think they're doing okay. And so you just need to kind of evaluate your own self and what you want to be doing.
Thank you so much for all your replies. So with regards to the panel, I think we're going to conclude at this moment. So thank you for those who did attend, and we want to thank you to the panelists for coming through and essentially giving us the well-needed advice that many of us graduating seniors are thinking at the moment. But if you are also looking for this recording, it'll be available on the Physical Sciences Undergraduate Mentorship website. And we hope you have a great day. Good luck on finals, not finals, midterms, and good luck on your classes.
Have a good night, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.